just a week after turning down a major partnership with Turning Point USA and publicly pledging to keep their Jesus Bowl event purely faith-focused and away from political agendas. Cory Asbury made an announcement that no one in the Christian community saw coming. After the Jesus Bowl idea went viral in early October, conservative political organization Turning Point USA announced their own alternative halftime show called the All-American Halftime Show, promising to celebrate faith, family, and freedom. Immediately, speculation erupted across social media, whether Cory and Frank would partner with Turning Point USA to create one massive unified event. The question dominated Christian social media for weeks, since both groups opposed Bad Bunny and wanted a family-friendly alternative that appealed to overlapping conservative audiences. However, by early November, Asbury posted a video to address the thousands of messages he was getting. He explained that Turning Point USA had announced their show with no venue and no artists, and in the spirit of unity, Asbury and Frank jumped on a call with the Turning Point USA team to explore a possibility to collaborate. But as Cory explained, the two visions were fundamentally incompatible.
Turning Point USA announced their own alternative halftime show. No venue, no artist, but they said, hey, we're doing this. So in the spirit of unity, Forrest and I jumped on a call with their team to talk it through. A productive, amicable discussion, but at the end of the day, the two visions are just incompatible.
This wasn't about logistics or branding. Asbury emphasized they wanted a Jesus moment, glorifying Jesus through worship and prayer, like a Billy Graham crusade with a call to the altar and mass salvation across the nation. While the All-American Halftime Show promised to celebrate faith alongside freedom and American identity, that political framing clashed directly with Asbury's pure evangelistic vision. By rejecting the Turning Point USA partnership, Asbury and Frank made a strategic choice, that their event would be about leading people to Jesus Christ and not politics. However, the decision wasn't universally celebrated in conservative Christian circles, as some saw it as a missed opportunity and unnecessary division when unity was needed. But for Asbury and Frank, the stakes were too high to compromise. Asbury reaffirmed their commitment to move forward independently, maintaining the spiritual purity of their vision, even if it meant rejecting political partnerships and facing greater logistical challenges. But then on November 11th, Cory Asbury made an announcement that shocked everyone who had been following the Jesus Bowl story. In a written post on social media, he revealed that despite all the momentum and all the commitments and all the resources coming together, they were canceling the event. In a statement, Cory wrote, "After much prayer, we have decided not to move forward with it in its current form. Not forever, just not now." Asbury elaborated further, saying, "What started as a dream to lift up the name of Jesus during one of the biggest moments of the year began to devolve into something else, something distracting. The dream was never about rivalry. It is not us versus Bad Bunny. It's not us versus Turning Point USA. It's not about politics, parties, or proving a point. The heart was never competition, just worship. We want whatever we do next to be pure and focused solely on Jesus, not on headlines, not on hype." The post concluded with hope for the future, despite the current pause. "We do believe there is something great to come in the spirit of what we were dreaming up, but sense there is a different expression God has in mind. Massive thank you to all who offer stadiums, arenas, churches, and other resources with no strings attached. Your commitment to see the gospel furthered is beautiful, and it will bear much fruit. Sincerely and with much love, Cory Hunter Asbury." It's important to note that the cancellation of Jesus Bowl 26 was not the result of logistical shortcomings. As Cory mentioned, hosting the event wasn't much of the issue. They had people who offered stadiums, arenas, churches, and other resources with no strings attached. But behind the scenes, something deeper was happening. Cory began to realize that the growing media attention and outside pressure were starting to drown out the project's true purpose. His original vision of a bold, evangelistic event was being reshaped by influences that didn't align with its spiritual heart. Cory's decision to step back wasn't a sign of failure, but of conviction. He understood that staying true to the mission sometimes means having the courage to walk away. To understand why Asbury made this decision, despite having all the resources lined up and ready to go, it helps to look at what has happened to other Christian media initiatives that tried to make a splash during major cultural moments like the Super Bowl. The most recent example that comes to mind is the He Gets Us campaign that ran during last year's Super Bowl. The campaign spent millions of dollars on advertisements promoting Jesus and trying to present the gospel message to a massive massive mainstream audience. But what happened next revealed just how difficult it is to maintain message purity when you are operating at that kind of cultural scale. The ads faced intense criticism, not just from secular audiences who disagreed with the religious messaging, but also from conservative Christians who accused the campaign of compromising core doctrine and watering down what the gospel actually teaches. The backlash from within the Christian community itself highlighted a harsh reality, which is that any large-scale Christian media effort will inevitably get filtered through existing political lenses, no matter what the stated intention actually is. Asbury and Frank had clearly seen this trap coming from miles away, which is exactly why they rejected the Turning Point USA partnership in the first place. They knew that associating with a political organization would immediately compromise the evangelistic purity of their vision. But here's the problem they could not escape. Even without a formal political partnership, the mere act of creating counter-programming positioned directly against Bad Bunny's halftime show carried unavoidable political connotations in today's cultural climate. The event was being redefined almost entirely by where it stood in America's ongoing culture war, rather than by its stated evangelistic purpose of leading people to salvation through Jesus Christ. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that the demand for what Asbury and Frank were trying to create was absolutely real and legitimate. For families who are genuinely uncomfortable with the explicit secular content that typically gets broadcast during Super Bowl halftime shows, the Jesus Bowl offered something genuinely valuable. It was a positive alternative rather than just another round of criticism or calls for boycott. The tens of thousands of supportive messages that flooded Asbury's social media accounts proved beyond any doubt that millions of Christians were hungry for this kind of option. The postponement of Jesus Bowl 26 does not mean the underlying vision is dead or abandoned. Asbury was very explicit in his written statement that this was not forever, just not now in this particular moment and context. He expressed a clear belief that there is something great to come in the spirit of what they were originally dreaming up, but that there is a different expression God has in mind that will better serve the actual purpose. As of November 2025, there will be no Jesus Bowl on February 8, 2026. Bad Bunny will perform his halftime show. Turning Point USA's All-American halftime show may or may not materialize, and millions of Christians will make individual choices about how to engage that cultural moment. But the Jesus Bowl story is not really about what happens on a specific date. It is about something more fundamental, which is the challenge of maintaining spiritual purity in a hyper-polarized culture that wants to weaponize everything, including faith. Asbury and Frank sparked a conversation that was not happening before about how Christians engage mainstream culture. The viral response proved the demand was real. Christians want alternatives that reflect their values. They want spaces where families can gather without compromise. They want to see Jesus lifted up on the biggest stages. But Asbury recognized something crucial. Sometimes protecting the message means abandoning the platform. The world will celebrate on Super Bowl Sunday, but the Jesus Bowl taught us something more valuable than counter-programming. It taught us that knowing when to step back is sometimes the boldest step forward.